Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of LunarCrush Live. Good afternoon, John. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good today. Joe, how are you?
I like your shirt.
Thanks. I was spicing it up today. It's actually little miniature frogs all over the shirt, so I thought it was a good day for some frogs.
It looks great. So everyone, today we're joined by Alan Austin, director of the Litecoin Foundation. He's waiting backstage. He'll be on in a second. We'll be discussing Litecoin. We'll, ask about a little bit of the history, what Alan's been up to, what's been going on here. There's a lot of updates that have been happening in Litecoin. They've been around for a really, really long time. Just a reminder, always, we do not take payment for our live streams. We bring on fun, cool, exciting people who have dedicated their careers and lives to crypto. Make sure you get in there, ask some questions. We'll try and get to them. Hit that subscribe button. We're going to have a lot more fun stuff coming up. And it looks like you want to do some Litecoin metrics as well.
Yeah, we can show a few things just to kind of show where we're at.
Sure.
Why not? Give me a moment and I will gladly share.
Sweet. It's been a while since we've been firing up the metrics.
Yeah, hold up here. I'm just trying to share it. Fun fact while I do that, Litecoin was the second coin I ever bought.
I'm going to guess what the first one is, but I think everyone already knows.
Yes, the first one was a different one. But I want to show just, I don't want to talk about price. Price is price. But, I just wanted to kind of point at what we're seeing with community activity. If we look, in fact, if we are talking price, we're still barely up over a 2-year period with Litecoin, which is far better than most of the market when you look at it right now. But I just wanted to point out the fact that, we've had some huge spikes in terms of the number of people talking about Litecoin at various moments. So, I mean, if we go back into here, we're talking about this is 36,000 people talking about Litecoin, individual, unique people talking about Litecoin in a day. And we're actually seeing still even recently, there's a lot of interest coming up here again. So this is still, I mean, you're talking 8,000 to 10,000 people a day still talking about Litecoin. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think there's this kind of narrative right now. We're in such an ugly market right now at the moment. And there's this sort of narrative that the community is not actually there. And, when we see that, that the community is still gradually rising over time with some patience, the community just continues to grow. So I think that's pretty interesting. And I'm actually super excited to talk about Litecoin because this is one of the OG projects out there. They've been through the market cycles and they've seen a lot more than what we're seeing right now. So I'm super excited to talk to Alan and see what they're seeing.
Awesome, man. Thank you for that. Without further ado, Alan, my man, how are you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Cool intro, by the way. I'd never seen that before.
Thanks,
I like that video.
Appreciate it. So we always like to start the live streams. Where are you in the world and what's it like there?
I live in Los Angeles and it's a concrete jungle. But it's always pretty much been that way. But it's good. All things considered, things are open again. Weather's been great. From a crypto standpoint, always activities going on in Los Angeles. So great.
Yeah, there's always meetups. It seems like there's little pockets of meetups going on, almost it just almost doesn't matter. It's like with LA, it's kind of like New York, there's always going to be an epicenter of something going on.
It's a hard place to leave, even though I've been, it's something I've been considering. Definitely, for sure.
Awesome, man. So, it's an interesting market out there right now. A lot of different things happening. It's like for folks that have been around for a long time, we always say, back to building, bear market, doesn't matter. We're just going to keep pushing things forward. But what do you say to the, some of the newer folks that have come in to the industry in the last couple of months? And they're they're just either in a panic mode or they're not looking at anything or they're not, they're just kind of the passerby that's starting to get into crypto right now. I mean, what do you tell those people as someone that's been around for a while?
Yeah. I mean, it's been pretty scary for a lot of people, especially that are having some crazy experiences for the first time in the space. I mean, I would say for anybody getting involved, as always, do some homework up front, do your research up front, really kind of get an overview of not only crypto, but the technology behind it, what it's all about. And because before you even spend any money, right? Just figure what's going on, because there's a million things out there. It could be easy to get overwhelmed, and for that reason, it could be easy to just jump on something that's hype, and because you're excited about something without knowing the fundamentals. And we've seen this a lot with several of the recent kind of disasters where people have just jumped on something because somebody else says it's great without really thinking about it or doing any homework. And unfortunately, that not only hurts new people, but it also hurts the crypto space in general. So there's a ton of research out, a ton of information out there that you can find, good quality information. I take some of the stuff on Twitter with a grain of salt, but there's some great material out there, and including what you guys do, and so much other information to really kind of absorb and ask questions too. And like with our foundation, we have the ability for people to volunteer and get involved that way to learn too. So I would just say, before you put too much money into something, know what you're putting it into, and kind of a rule of thumb: if you don't understand how something works, if it's too complicated to make sense in a simple way, there's probably a reason for that.
That's good advice. And so maybe you can just kind of walk us back a little bit. What is Litecoin? How did Litecoin start? And what's your role over there?
Yeah, so Litecoin is a decentralized cryptocurrency. It's very similar to Bitcoin. It was launched a couple of years after Bitcoin by Charlie Lee, the creator. It has many of the same properties as Bitcoin. It's decentralized like Bitcoin. It had a fair launch. It's highly liquid across pretty much all major exchanges. So it's basically community driven in that respect, but with some small changes. And I think the goal when Charlie created Litecoin was he had a chance to look at how Bitcoin was working at the time. And after you look at something, you can kind of make some tweaks based on what you think might be improved. And the main tweak is that everything is basically 4 times, meaning it's 4 times as fast. It has 4 times as many coins. So your confirmations are quicker. And because of those things, the fees are also much less as well. So it has the similar properties in that it's highly secure. It's decentralized. It's time tested. We're now going on 11 years with some small added benefits of it being a little bit quicker for confirmation, but also long enough where it's still secure. And yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. From a Litecoin standpoint.
So just to go back a bit, I mean, I'll get my dates specific here. So first Bitcoin transaction was January 12th, 2009. Charlie released Litecoin on GitHub on October 7th. Network went live October 13th, 2011. What was it? What did he see that was the issue with Bitcoin that needed to be solved to release Litecoin?
It's a good question to probably ask him. I think part of what he did was he created it kind of just for fun. I mean, I do think there was he changed some of these parameters because he thought obviously it would make sense. Maybe looking forward, so when Bitcoin's launched, right, the idea was that 10 minutes is kind of a nice balance between security and speed. And I think as things progress, you kind of sort of look at how you might be able to fine tune things a little bit. And maybe I can only expect Charlie's thought was, well, we can make it 4 times as fast. That's still secure enough. But when we're paying for things, we don't want to have to wait forever, things like that. That'll also help with costs and things like that. But at the same time, keeping the qualities that Bitcoin offers. And one of his things he chose very carefully was to do a fair launch, meaning unlike a lot of the projects we see today, there was no pre-mine. There was no advantage to any particular person. Where they could and the problem with that is that then they could dump the coins on the market, right? And there's a lot more control that way, a lot more, somebody or a group of people would have a lot more influence by owning a large chunk of the coins, and you're really subject to, you have less control yourself. So the idea with Litecoin is that, you're in control of your own money, and decentralization was a key part of that. So I think those were things, but I know for sure he didn't expect it to become and evolve what it was today. I think that kind of surprised him at the time. But the beauty of that is it became this way because of the community. It didn't become that way because of some huge marketing budget or somebody that was pushing that. So
it's a beautiful thing. Is Charlie still involved? How does the development work still?
100%. Yeah, he's with the foundation. He's involved every day. We're working on many different projects. So absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
marathon. That's a decade. That's amazing. That's probably one of the longest careers in all of crypto right there.
In the crypto world, it's a lifetime. It feels like.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I remember like when it was kind of started there, it was like, everyone was saying, okay, if Bitcoin is going to be this kind of digital gold, and then Litecoin was going to be, what you pay for your coffee with or something. And is that still kind of the narrative today with everything? I mean, it's like whenever you go in any sort of like, payment service, and even some of the biggest ones, like even like a Coinbase Commerce and things like that, it's like it always, like Litecoin's always considered. It's always a part of kind of what's going on for any sort of kind of payment rails. And so is it like kind of continuing to work into that path, or is there some other things that have kind of adjusted along the way?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the core value of Litecoin is for payments, and I would argue also a store of value. It was sort of designed that way. It's sort of evolved that way, I should say. Mainly reason being that, and Bitcoin could be great for payments too, but to do small payments, it gets very expensive. And the other thing with Bitcoin is that I think more people in general are more interested in hodling and holding and not spending their Bitcoin. And again, part of that is because of the high transaction costs for small transactions. But Litecoin sort of solves that problem because the fees are pennies on the dollar. But it also does that in a safe and secure way because the network is, because of the high liquidity, because it's decentralized, because it's across all these exchanges, because it's been around for this long. And the hash rate is strong. It has these high secure properties. So while you're holding it, you know that it's safe and secure, and spending it makes it much easier. I think when we looked at people that are adopting it, like the PayPal, Venmo, and other people where they're maybe selecting just a few coins, I can only imagine that they're looking at some that have been proven over time and that show reliability and have that reliability. They're not looking at what's the next, sizzling token out there, or something else that they think is going to go to the moon, because they're looking at, they've got to take a careful approach. So I can only imagine, and this is I think great, is that they're looking at something that's going to be around, 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I'm hoping, and I believe that's how they make these decisions.
I like this guy says, I use Litecoin for burritos.
I've used Litecoin for burritos too.
Okay, so I want to talk about this because I'm a little upset. I went to Chipotle last week. I saw the announcement about Chipotle accepting crypto. I went there. I had some Litecoin on my wallet, and they said they don't accept crypto. So, and I was like, I was confused. Maybe the workers didn't know about it. I don't know. I was confused.
So I think what the confusion was is that, so I don't know, are you familiar with the Flexa network? Okay, so you can buy food at Chipotle now. It's been added to the Flexa network, meaning that you could spend your Litecoin or crypto through the Flexa network out at Chipotle. They wouldn't have to know that they accept Litecoin. All they're doing is you're giving them a QR code through Flexa, and they're scanning that, right? It works with their existing system. So I can understand why somebody might say, we don't. That'll probably change as people start using it, of course, but they do accept Litecoin. It's just sort of a different route in the way they accept it, where you can basically just generate a QR code and pay with Litecoin.
Oh man, it ruined my day. I was all excited. I got through the line and found out at the end that they didn't know anything. They actually laughed at me about.
And I think I saw a 10% off coupon on Chipotle, if I wasn't mistaken, but I don't know if it's still there.
I'm gonna try again next time.
But yeah, Flexa, and you can use Flexa. We're going to be integrating. We'll talk more if you want later, but we're going to be integrating Flexa into Lite Wallet, which is the Lite Wallet is part of the foundation development, and but also you can use the Speedin app. You can download, use Flexa, or like if you have a Gemini account, they're integrated into Flexa, where you can generate the Flexa QR codes that way. And with that, you could spend your crypto that you have on the exchange. So there's going to be more and more ways to use it, but one of the ways we're excited about is the integration with our wallets.
Good to know.
So we've seen a lot of, like, we're talking about, some of these other tokens, right? And a lot of like activity, like Ethereum comes out, even years after Litecoin. And there's like kind of like smart contracting that's happening. And it's like, why do you think that something like a Litecoin, which, it's got the faster transactions, there's times 4 but it's like, there's been other things that are like that, right? There's been kind of, public blockchains that haven't changed. It's like, why do you think Litecoin's kind of lasted this test of time, where a lot of other projects are just kind of going to the wayside?
I think it's because it's been sticking to, well, I think but number one, the way it's been designed, was designed in the first place. I think it's been decentralized. It had a fair launch. It's been now, I think, proven its time, running almost 11 years, which I really think in the crypto space is really something that is looked at, or, is important, especially now as we've seen some of these products launch, and several of them now, fail or crash and burn pretty quickly, unfortunately. So I think that's a big part of it. It's, it may not be as exciting as some of the other projects. In fact, many people would call it boring. But if excitement means what we've seen in the last couple of months, I'll take boring any day of the week. So there's something to be said for boring. With that said, though, there are some interesting things happening with Litecoin, where we're looking at the ideas of being able to build on top of Litecoin some for lack of a better word, some smart contract type of things, and other potential applications above and beyond, it's sort of the core value. I always look at, like, the core thing is building the best money in the world, but building sound money. If there are other things that we can add value on top of that the community decides are works great, then awesome. That's more power to Litecoin. So I think anything that helps adoption is a good thing. The beauty is that it's all being built on something that's strong and reliable and time tested. And I think that's more important than anything, because you can build the greatest project in the world, but if it's sitting on a house of cards, it's going to be, it's pointless. So I think also, that, and there's just a lot of, I think when we see like a lot of people getting involved in these other projects, but when you look at some of the grayscales and the much larger companies in the world that are getting involved, there a lot of them are really sticking to those, I think, coins with those core principles. And I would expect and hope that'll even be more the case with some of these unfortunate incidents that we've seen with Luna and other things.
Right. I love your boring comment so much, because I feel like this is one of the most overlooked, like, sort of principles in crypto, where it's like, if you can launch so much so fast, that means you can change so much so fast and crash and burn so much so fast. And like, if it's easy to change things, that's not a good thing necessarily. And like, it's really interesting to see something that's been around for a decade, and you called it boring, but it's kind of like this it's like this Silicon Valley Web 2.0 mentality of, like, you got to launch and just evolve and innovate. And it's kind of interesting, because we've seen so much of that, especially over the last year or two, from a lot of projects, and now all of them have fallen off a cliff, all of them. And what are your thoughts on the market and how it's operated?
It's funny. I for some strange reason, I came across that story of the Little Red Riding Hood the other day again, and I'm reading about that. And for those that remember how the one pig built the first house quick, that straw house, basically trying to be safe from the wolf, thinking it was quick, but at least they can then play and have some fun. But it was weak. The next person that built that wood house, and then you had the brick house. And I keep thinking how that's kind of what we've seen in the crypto space, where a lot of people are rushing things to the market for whatever reason. But the problem with that is that there's a lot of risk to that, and you end up with a straw house, and all it takes is a small puff to kind of blow it down. And then you have people that are maybe being a little more diligent, but they're still not really carefully thinking things through. And so when you have a larger incident, whether it's an attack or just a market, some market crash or anything else, that also is proven to fail. And sometimes, so I look at Litecoin as the brick house in this respect. And I think in the longer term, these things are really important. And I hope people like realize and learn from some of these experiences. Like I'm not against building and experimenting. And I think we're going to push the envelope, but I think there's a fine line between, taking a careful approach to how we do things. And that means being slower. But it also means not losing all your money.
That's a great point. It's a responsible approach when you get things built on top of your application. So let's maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, so what do you, I guess, what do you look at, you know, from as far as like use cases go of Litecoin? I know you guys got into gaming and a bunch of other things, and so like tell us a little more about the various use cases that you're seeing.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things has been the launch of Omni Lite. Basically, it's like an open source platform or a sort of a layer that's basically built on top of Litecoin's blockchain. And what it does is it allows for the creation of some additional decentralized tokens, smart cap contracts, digital assets, things like maybe a stable coin, and also things like maybe NFTs and so forth. So what we've seen with the launch of Omni Lite is a community that's really loves Litecoin for its core principles, but it's like, wow, we can now take this and maybe do some other great things. And so we're seeing people starting to explore and build apps around NFTs, for example. Like, for example, we just had Liteverse as a company that just launched the first NFT platform for on top of Litecoin, where people can buy and sell NFTs on Litecoin. There's a couple of other companies that I'm aware of that are also working on those types of things. I think stablecoin application is incredibly promising on top because, again, it goes back to being stable, and that means building depending on what you're built on top of. So I think we're still kind of figuring out in general with NFTs and where that place is and what's going to be valuable and stuff. But the fact that this layer allows for additional advancements on top of Litecoin is pretty exciting. And I think we're very early still, so it's going to take some time. But I think we'll definitely see a lot more there as Litecoin continues to remain strong.
You mentioned NFTs. Like, what is your perspective on NFTs at this point?
Like, in my personal perspective, I mean, I did like a kind of a weird, funny video like a while back where I dressed up as an Italian chef, and basically I made this great pizza as a famous Italian chef. I took a picture of the pizza to create an NFT. I then posted the pizza and somebody bought it, paid me for it. But I still had the pizza and I still got to eat the pizza and the money that I had for the NFT. So I was sort of making, and this is not to knock NFTs in general, but I think it's not about the NFT as much as what the NFT it represents, right? So I think people got caught up in the whole idea of NFTs. Maybe they were overvalued. I think and highly overvalued in many cases. And I also think that's because we're still figuring out where the real value of NFTs are. I do think there's a place for them, though, definitely. It's just, I think, like anything when it's new or it's kind of an experimental discovery phase, and we're figuring all that out. But I think people need to be careful, too, because you're also putting trust into the person that makes NFTs, that they're not going to create more and all these other things. So I think it's interesting and it's cool. I don't know. I don't have a full opinion yet, I guess, on it. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it, and to see where it takes us. NFTs. Yeah.
I got one yesterday.
I don't know.
Someone sent me a note of it was picture frames for NFTs, but it was basically just a computer. It was just a monitor, and hooked up. And they're like, "This is a in-house display of your NFTs." It's like, I was like, "You mean like a digital picture frame?" Right? Like, it was just literally like the exact same thing. And it's just like, it was just another example of kind of like the cart before the horse, a little bit of like, we didn't even figure out like a Bitcoin and Litecoin as an industry yet. And there's just like this proliferation of everything, which it's like, it's a free market and like, this is going to happen, but you just have to be ready for this kind of peak and trough type of thing when you have, millions of people kind of chasing after the same thing with their own iteration of it. Versus everyone kind of coming together and potentially working on the same thing, which is kind of where we've landed.
I mean, that's a good point. We do just kind of just try and push things sometimes too quick, and then we see the consequences of those things. But I don't think that'll probably change. People are going to continue to push the envelope, and in some ways it's good, and in some ways, unfortunately, it hurts a lot of people too. But I think that goes back to educating yourself when you get into the space. Understanding what you're getting involved in to the best you can. And of course, the old saying, never, invest more than you could afford to lose, which unfortunately, I think a lot of people do, even though they hear that, they're like, kind of brush it off because greed gets the best of all of us. It really does. And I don't
Yeah.
think that'll change, unfortunately, but
Yeah, that human behavior is going to be there, but it's nice because I feel like at least in our industry, a lot of people do kind of preach this, like responsibility, self-responsibility, autonomy, like financial, like autonomy. And like, you just kind of, if everyone is, leveling up on that, as a whole, we're a little bit more responsible. And so it's like, as you come in the industry, it's like on a whole, people are kind of preaching out that and saying like, not your keys, not your coins, like all these other things. Like, I'm sure a lot of Bitcoiners and like early Litecoiners right now looking at something like a Celsius going like, it is kind of a I told you so moment, for a lot of people that are kind of understanding that. And it's like, well, this can happen anywhere. Right. And it's like, if we
anywhere,
continue to
and
build
it's all
into this,
connected too.
yeah,
Unfortunately, it's like, yeah, it impacts everybody. Like if something happens to like a Celsius as big as they are, I mean, if people that aren't using Celsius and are just holding in cold storage, that don't think that it impacts them in one way or another, it does, because it's all tied together. We're still early on in within the crypto industry, and we don't want to scare people away. And when I always, and I'm curious about your take on this, it's always kind of a double-edged sword. Like, I think these events are positive and that we're going to push the envelope anyway, so now we can kind of helps us see how far we can go and maybe what's not going to work, and maybe hopefully do things better. But at the same time, it also hurts a lot of people who put all their eggs in one basket or do things like that. Because I love the idea of earning interest and borrowing against crypto and things where you're avoiding, not having to pay taxes and other things like that. But some of that, and I think some of that's still promising, but there's also a level of you're at the mercy of a centralized organization and the decisions they make. And sometimes greed gets the best of that too. There's a lot of competition, and they're probably trying to push the envelope there. And with DeFi and other things that they can really, and then all of a sudden we get into highly leveraged positions. And I think that's one of the biggest killers. And that has a cradling effect, and everything gets, we've seen like, this happens, then it's Celsius, now it's Three Arrows, and there's kind of a trigger effect of everything. And so,
yeah, well, I would say we can't even classify that as DeFi, right? Like, it's a centralized.
Well, that
company,
part, correct. So they might be
right.
playing with, and DeFi is not, and it's not, and I don't mean anything against DeFi. DeFi is not specific, but there's a lot of protocols out there, and there's a lot of leveraging capabilities. And I think that's where things get risky, because all it takes is one thing over here to happen to create a margin call over here, and all of a sudden there's a cascading effect, and that's often what has caused these. In this case, the timing hasn't been great with the overall economy anyway, but
yeah, a lot of factors.
We always see people getting wiped out because of highly leveraged, situations. And so I think that's always unfortunate. But
yeah,
there's another side. There's also another side to this too. It's like, it's really like, the principles always win. The principle is, I hold this coin and I want to have passive income. Like, you could coin it DeFi, you could coin it whatever you want. That's a really sound principle. And the sad thing here is that people have had to go and trust anyone in what's supposed to be a trustless environment. Like, it's just sort of like, it's kind of sad. And I think it goes back, Alan, to what you were saying about I'm going to come back to the word boring. It comes back to like, we're running too fast, like, as an industry. And when we don't stop to maybe think of our architectural approach to how we're going to do stuff, we're just more concerned as an industry with getting stuff live and launching and then throwing a big party. Like, it's sort of, we need boring back a little bit, it seems like.
Yeah, and just to be clear, boring doesn't, and I say boring, but it's boring and to me in an exciting way, right? So we're building better money, right? And we're still early in adoption. Seeing the adoption and other things, not to mention some of the other potential capabilities on top of Litecoin, are very exciting. But I think the core values are generally boring. And also, let's be real, money doesn't need to be exciting. I mean, what money should be boring? I mean, when you're paying with $1, it doesn't need to like do a dance for you or anything. It just needs to do what it does. I think it's the same with money. It just needs to do what it does, which is be money. So, and the more you start trying to do funny and tricky things, I think the more you start creating more risks. And, I think that becomes the problem sometimes. But I'm always about, also seeing what we can do. So I think there's in some ways it's healthy to see how far we can, what's to come. And we don't even know what's going to be out, what we're going to be doing years from now. But on the other hand, it's at least we know one thing, like what like Litecoin has now had zero downtime for almost 11 years because of its values and principle and, the core things that it offers. So that's working. So we can say that much, right? We can't say like what else may or may not work yet in some areas, but we could say that. Same with Bitcoin. It's working. And the more those things work, the better money becomes, the more of a store of value it becomes, because over the longer run, I would hope that will become more and more important to people.
And I think it's downturns like this, whether it's, in each of the countries that are out there and the money printing that's gone on, and, inflation's taking hold. And yes, in the short term, like some assets will decrease in value, but it's to use the word boring, it's like banks were supposed to be boring, right? Like it's savings and loans, right? And it's like we lend at, 4% and we, make money at, whatever percent. Like we have a little spread in there. There's a little margin and that's it. We, get up and then we go home at 3. And then it's like all of the different instruments that were put on top of it is what got everyone into trouble. And it's kind of like we saw the same thing in crypto. It's like just a standard like DeFi borrowing and lending like is basically what we wanted, right? It's a decentralized, trustless way for us all to do borrowing and lending, right? But when you toss in the centralized portion on top of that at some of these, like the Celsius of the world, the BlockFi's of the world, like, yes, they're doing a service and they're kind of holding stuff and maybe trying to make it just a little bit easier for people, which is fine. It's a step. But at the same time, it's like that is the traditional world overlaid onto just like this other asset that people are holding. And that wasn't the point of that, right? And so it's like if it was all just pure like AMMs versus the market makers, right? And all these centralized exchanges, like something like Terra doesn't happen, right? Like it's the Terra and Luna had 400 or 500 different pairings across however many exchanges. And it's like, that is manual market making that's happening, somewhat manual market making that's happening that people could exploit. What's a lot more difficult to exploit is a massive AMM in one concise pool that, the run on the bank, the proverbial run on the bank doesn't happen as easily there. And so it's like, I think we've just all learned our lesson that like, this is not, that part didn't work. Right. But those folks have a lot of capital. And so it's like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting to see, like you're just saying, like not going down for like 10 years, like name another, like outside of Bitcoin, right? Name something else that is there. I mean, I don't know how old like Digibyte is, but like maybe they're up there. Like we definitely know like Solana's not up there, right? Like it's really interesting to think like that time period.
And I'll add to that. It's not only been around for 10 years. It continues to grow. Now, putting price aside for a minute, because anybody that's been investing for a long time will understand price doesn't always follow like adoption. It doesn't always follow the fundamentals in the short term. Ultimately, it does catch up. But all the other metrics have been amazing. I mean, it's growing, and from a payment standpoint, it's now the second most used cryptocurrency. Ever since we added it to VicPay, which is a huge payments company, it's continuing to grow. It's large and very strong against all of the other cryptocurrency that they offer. And that says a lot. That's very telling. So it's not just that it's been around for 10 years, but that people are continuing to find it and see it as a great option for payments. And again, I think that goes back to the reliability of it, knowing that it's still going to be there when they want to use it, when they want to spend it. But those things are exciting. And of course, and I know I'm sure you wanted to talk about, we added some additional privacy on top of Litecoin as well. So, which is even makes it that much better money in general.
All right, yeah, let's talk about MWEB.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that.
Which is for those that don't know, it's Mimblewimble extension block. Probably I don't know, this might be the largest upgrade that I remember in a long time.
Definitely the largest upgrade, especially when it comes to the idea of like sound money, for sure. No question. Yeah.
So tell us more. How does this work?
Yeah. So basically, Litecoin is very much like Bitcoin as far as the level of privacy or not the lack of privacy that you have. Right now, people can see when you send, they may not know who you are by name, but they could see your sending address. They could see, if they go on the blockchain, right? It's all transparent. The sending address, the amount sent, the receiving address. And for some people, if they really wanted to, they can use tools. And because everything on the blockchain is connected, they can find, they could see how much is in a particular wallet or where those funds have come from and things like that. So it really opens up to kind of a level of concern regarding privacy, and that, opening up to potential vulnerability with people becoming targets and hacks and things like that. The goal with MWEB is to create a fun, like a basic level of privacy that, by the way, already exists with banks and other traditional financing in the traditional financing system, that would allow people the option, and we'll get to why it's optional, to use MWEB, Litecoin in a more private way. And what MWEB basically does is it encrypts or hides or encrypts three things: the sending address, the amount being sent, and the receiving address. The only people that know that are the sender and the receiver. So, and it's optional, meaning you don't have to use it, but if you want to use it for a particular transaction, you could send your Litecoin to an MWEB related address, and it's now in MWEB. Once you want, if you ever decide, you could then send it, opt out and send it right outside of, send it right back to the Litecoin main chain. So the beauty of it being, and the reason we made it optional is because we do recognize that exchanges have a lot of regulation and concerns when it comes to anything related to privacy. So by making it optional, this allows anybody that has those concerns to not say accept Litecoin that's sent from an MWEB address, but also still allow people to use it whenever they want and keep it in MWEB as long as they want. So I mean, think of something like payroll, right, where you're paying employees. You don't want one employee to figure out how much another one is making. Think of if you go, like when you go to a shop right now and you buy a coffee or something, and if you pay with crypto, right now they could basically see if they wanted to how much is in your address, right? And if they really wanted to, they could trace and see where that money's come from, right? That when you pay with a credit card, they don't see that. When you pay with PayPal or cash, they don't see how much money you have in your bank account. So MWEB basically blocks the ability for someone to see how much they know that you're paying, but they don't have to know how much you have or where it came from. So again, this is a level of privacy that's already exists in the traditional finance system. And we felt it was important for sound money because that was really the one main thing. It's not perfect, meaning it's not 100% private, but it's private enough for most people. Yeah, I was reading an article that I think Charlie Lee had quoted, like a pretty good analogy. Like if the Litecoin blockchain and or Bitcoin or Litecoin blockchain is sort of like an all glass house, MWEB is sort of a house with some windows. Where if you want full privacy, you'd live in a house with no windows, right? Well, most people can live in a house with some windows. And that strikes a balance between not being delisted from most exchanges and also building better money and sound money. So
this is such an interesting, this actually even goes back to our centralized discussion versus decentralized. Like, we were reading about, Litecoin was delisted in Korea by several centralized exchanges, and who had a problem with MWEB, with privacy. And we, even on the show, we probably had, I don't know, 5 to 10 projects that have different technology, similar idea. Like it's an optional to sort of like obfuscate certain information so it's not public. The HR example is a fantastic one, especially when you're the second most used crypto for payments. It's like a natural evolution. But then the exchanges, like, what is their issue here with this when they're just providing trading?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, I mean, we look at this, and MWEB is not only is a right. People have a right, and it's a fundamental human right, privacy, and by financial privacy by extension. Unfortunately, I think we have a big world, and there's different countries and governments, and they don't always look at the same thing the way like we might or somebody else might. I don't know exactly, I can't say what was going on specifically with these particular exchanges. It was a little bit surprising that they would just outright delist when there are definitely other options. Maybe there's a lot of pressure they're having because of the Luna collapse, maybe there's some other things. And, obviously if they'll get fined heavily, I can't really speak for that. It seems very silly because not only is it optional, but if they were, what it tells me, okay, if an exchange is just willing to outright delist Litecoin, what they're basically saying to me is they're not willing to accept any Litecoin that may at one point in its history been through MWEB, right? Even though it's not in there anymore, right? Because they're basically delisting it. Because if not, they could just be optional and say, okay, we'll accept it, but it can't come from MWEB. If you're saying that it should never have been through MWEB, you're saying that I don't want to ever accept any coin that might have been used for some nefarious activity, whatever they want to call it, nefarious activity. Well, if that's the case, then they need to look at every single other coin they have on their exchange, right?
Yeah, that
because
can't be.
it doesn't have, you can use that. I guarantee you, there's many coins out there that obviously don't have MWEB that at one point in their time was used for something, that they might call nefarious. So it doesn't make sense that way. So it kind of tells me maybe there are some ulterior reasons, or I really don't know for sure. We don't expect the majority of exchanges to do that. If you I don't know if you saw Binance, they actually came out and said, we're not going to accept coins directly sent from MWEB. So please make sure they're sent from, the main chain. That's the way we expect most chains to handle it. But I think, again, unfortunately, there's a lot of control. There's a lot of different moving parts to different societies, and regulations a moving target too. And again, it could be something else that happened that really triggered anything that has the word privacy, even though it really is not privacy in the way people are thinking, in a negative way. So
yeah, there's also, it's like we've had a couple on just recently. Like I feel like this is coming to a head here in the industry with privacy, because like people use the centralized exchange as like the privacy, right? Because like of what you're saying, it's like, oh, you have to send a specific thing that you didn't want someone to know, like you were saying, like how much money is in your wallet, because if there's an attacker out there or whoever else it may be, and they know, it's like they can pin that maybe back to a location or something else like that. And it's not about, it's like 99.999% of the time for people, it's not about like the government, right? It's about the other folks out there. Like, look at all the scams going on with like Bored Apes and other things, where it's like they're just spamming these Discord channels or spamming Twitter and all these things, trying to get you to click on a link. Like, that's what people are worried about. They're not worried about, like, at the end of the day, if the government's going to come for you, they're probably going to get you. So, if you're doing something, you're probably going to get caught. But it's about all these other things and trying to protect your capital. And the centralized exchange is one of the only places that you can send cryptocurrency to, and then send it out of there. And they're like, oh, it's just coming from the Binance wallet or the Kraken wallet or whatever else it may be. And so there's no decentralized way to do this yet, right? It's like, or people send stuff through like over a bridge to a random wallet or something. And it's like, then, you have to send something across a bridge. And like, that's probably like the biggest hole in all of crypto right now.
Yeah, no, yeah, great points. And, we also, regulation's a moving target. And if we've got to be careful, because we have to focus on like with the foundation and building Litecoin as sound money, and not what every, particular exchange is going to requirements are. Because if that's the case, we'll never get anything done, because first of all, half of these exchanges and governments don't know what the hell they're doing, or what's next, right? They're still trying to figure it all out. And so we would be jumping through all kinds of hurdles. And the other thing is, it's a very dangerous road once you start like giving in to too many things that really, we believe, harm your rights to privacy and things. Where does that go? How far does that go? And the whole idea of building Litecoin, and I would hope crypto in general, was to do something better, and to create something that was more private and more valuable to people. And I would think most human beings would see the things we're doing as very positive, because we're trying to build something that helps safeguard people. I mean, look how many hacks there have been. Even exchanges aren't great at or companies like BlockFi or Ledger at storing your data very safe. We've seen all kinds of leaks. So it's kind of ironic that for exchanges say they need to be, we're just trying to, in some ways we're making it easier for the exchange. So it's, and I believe this is a gift for exchanges, because they can continue supporting Litecoin, because they don't have to accept an MWEB, an MWEB transaction. So there's going to be some fights probably. I'm sure they're not. I mean, I expect there may be some other exchanges that might go the full extreme of delisting. I don't think it'll be the majority of them. And eventually, if need be, there'll be a push to more decentralized exchanges, maybe better ones and things. And because what's the point of doing what we're doing if we're not going to, focus on building better money?
Completely agree. Yeah, it's amazing. It's also an interesting topic. I mean, privacy is almost just like it should just be there. I mean, it's like a fundamental aspect of crypto, but it's like if we start to have different industries and groups and exchanges and so on, start to say what's right and what's wrong and what's tradable and what's not. I mean, like, things start to get made up. Like, oh, you have a unregistered metaverse, so we can't trade your token now. And then like, oh, your token is used for, I don't know, e-commerce, and we can't allow decentralized e-commerce. Like, people start to make things up, and it starts to become this really complicated, convoluted thing. And yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So let's maybe move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about like, I mean, how does Litecoin look at interoperability with other chains? Is it sort of its own enclosed ecosystem, or do you kind of look at things working across different chains with Litecoin?
I mean, it is its own ecosystem, and to what, you know, our focus has been. But I think there are other third parties that are developing all these cross-chain solutions. So I think we'll continue to see more and more of that. As far as that goes, and like atomic swaps, you know, and things like that we'll look at, which would allow one party to say exchange Litecoin for Bitcoin without the need of a third party involved, basically across two different chains. So it doesn't. I think the more we build Litecoin as sound money, the more people use it, the more people are going to want to try and, you know, push these things and see what else and make it as easy as possible to use, which means getting in and out of it and exchanging it and things like that. So I do think there's some interoperability, but I think it'll grow more. You know, we've yet to see like a lot of the interesting things that I think will be happening in the space. But there's some of that now. So
it's also interesting with OmniLite. Like, I'm curious how creative some people get with that. Like, if you were to build on top of Litecoin and sort of use Litecoin also within your application, your dApps, like, how does that all come together? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think like for me, like and also a stable coin has a really strong use case. So I think that's really exciting. But yeah, I agree. And you know, just so people understand, OmniLite doesn't have the extent of smart contract capabilities that say something like Ethereum does, but it has enough to really kind of do some cool things. And one of the things too to keep in mind is when you have like a third party that say like this Liteverse that launched, that's allowing the buying and selling of OmniLite. You can deposit Litecoin, you could buy, you can sell your NFTs. There's some level of centralization on some of the features, meaning like one of the things I know that their exchanges are trying to do with OmniLite is come to a consensus on some protocols, agreed upon protocols, so that no matter where you have your NFT on either exchange, you'll be able to say send it across, use built-in royalties and things like that. And even with Ethereum and other things, there's always some element of like centralization, right, on any exchange. So I think it's very promising. We're never gonna escape some level of centralization. It's just impossible. But I do think it's interesting and exciting. And like for stable coins, though, it could be a very decentralized thing. And I think that's really awesome. And then, you know, there's been interest like for potentially like a wrapped Litecoin to participate in DeFi, and so that's always something that's, you know, potentially on the table. There's a lot of interesting things there. We just kind of have to focus on our core mission right now. And we just released MWEB, so that was a big project that that we were working on. So.
Are there any kind of DeFi application type things that are built around Litecoin in any way, like pools that are out there? It's like you feel like with Litecoin, there's probably a lot of folks that are just like life holders, right? And that would say like, yeah, I'll lend this out for 4% or 3% or something else like that. I mean, is there anything out there that folks are using with that's in a more decentralized manner, or is it a lot of the stuff is probably built into, you know, maybe some of the other centralized things that are out there?
You mean like a token backed by Litecoin that you can then send over here to participate?
Yeah, or if I have $100,000 with a Litecoin and I want to lend it out to someone because I'm gonna, never want to sell that.
Well, you could. Well, I mean, like these centralized, like the Celsius was, and BlockFi is, you know, and many others, you know, Abra and others are allowing you to earn interest against your. Well, actually, all three of those and some others. You can earn interest against your Litecoin. You could borrow against it in many cases. So if you're talking about decentralized, I think that's more of like we're talking to some companies that propose and exploring some ideas where, you know, we're like with like a staked or wrapped type Litecoin, and they can participate more in DeFi. There's always it's just a matter of like doing it the right way, I think, because you're giving up your Litecoin, and that's where is sort of the weak part, you know, and so it's, yes, I think that'll grow. I think we'll be doing more in time. I do expect.
Yeah, it's like slow and steady wins the race with some of this stuff. I remember early on when all the crazy stuff was happening with NFTs and people were, and like Dogecoin and stuff, and people were always like, I was like, if you can, because big companies wanted to like partner, right? And I'm always like, if you can call like the CMO of a project, like you're probably not dealing with a very decentralized like entity yet, right? Like, so it's like, you know, it's completely understandable. It's like Coca-Cola has a CMO and their entire like idea is to grow and get out there and put all this amazing branding work out there. And that does grow stuff, right? Like that's kind of what happens. But a community run project is not going to have that because there's a lot more people making decisions and it's a little bit more nimble, but naturally, you know, some standstill and some like, you know, arguing back and forth on where the next direction should go. Like it means you really have to make your case. Right. You really have to be inarguable to move this thing forward. And so it's like, it seems like with the foundation and everything, it's like you guys are, you know, you have to do that. You've got to do something to really push this thing forward and commit, you know, and make it inarguable before you move forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's very important. And I like when Lisa said she's commented there are pulls with Wrap Litecoin and many DeFi platforms. So I think I did, and I did see. I can't keep track of everything that's out there, but I did see some
we track
on other, not on Ethereum,
cryptocurrencies every day. So
I think Binance Chain and some others had some of their own tokens. So there are, it's moving quickly, but there are some. I can't. We've been talking also about, you know, some people approach us and talking about maybe on Ethereum and stuff, but it's just taking a careful approach, really. But things are happening. You know, this NFT thing is relatively new, but it's moving forward. MWEB is still young, but we're seeing more people starting to use it, and the more people that use it, the more it actually works best. So we've got to do kind of one thing at a time, I guess. You know, at least try not to do too many things at a time.
Right.
So I'd love to switch topics again here and shift more towards the community. And, you know, when we look at our own data, you know, you approached 1.5 million social mentions last year. So that's great. That's a lot of activity. I guess, how do you see the crypto community fitting into your efforts, and how do you see them playing into everything you're doing?
Well, I mean, with Litecoin, it's the community is like almost basically everything. It's decentralized, so it wouldn't survive or be here today if it wasn't for the community and the great volunteers to the foundation and developers and everybody else. Very much like Bitcoin, you know, it's the development community that and all the entire community in general that really is its strongest asset. I think we don't have a marketing budget like Litecoin itself, I should say. That, you know, that are founder coins or tokens that we can use to help keep it alive. But I think that's really important because that can only do so much, right? Eventually you're gonna run out of money, and to show that something has survived and continues to grow on the backs of the community is I think really a huge thing as far as validating its strength. Because in order to survive, like, you know, 50 years from now or longer, it's going to be the community. It's not going to be some marketing person, you know, marketer or heavy funds backing it. That would never work in the very long term.
Sure. And what are some, I guess, some of those strategies that Litecoin has in place to engage with that community, to create that dialogue and create that kind of groundswell?
So with the foundation, so a couple of things. So the community, there's a community in general, which people are working on various things, promoting Litecoin in various ways. The foundation was set up basically as a nonprofit organization. Basically, the mission is to advance a Litecoin for the good of society. Basically, like things like furthering education, information, resources, community and research and development. Basically, to see Litecoin adoption. So we have a core like sort of staff, paid staff, and then we have some volunteers within the foundation. And then we have like the entire Litecoin community as well. So, and everybody, you know, can participate. You don't have to be within the foundation, but the foundation helps to kind of drive things as well and do their part. Anybody can really create a Litecoin foundation because it's decentralized. I think some people don't realize that, but so what we're doing is trying to focus on, as the foundation, focus on the key things that are important, like really, you know, getting MWEB development, releasing out probably the most important thing, hands down. But we're also helping to support, things like OmniLite, wallet development, integrations for payments, anything we could push to help payments. We just released a new website, and goal is to create a full resource center for the community, and also a portal for businesses to help onboard businesses that want to basically accept Litecoin and kind of guide them in the right direction. So it's all about adoption and growth and payments. And we also support the community, and if, whatever types of projects are going on. The other thing too, is we just formed a partnership with LTC Labs, which is Antpool, and they're basically donating half of their Litecoin pool revenue to this fund, which will be then voted on between Antpool and Litecoin Foundation. And the idea is we'll vote on where those funds will go, to help further adoption of Litecoin. So that was awesome for them to do that as well. There's a lot of different things that are going on, and different people helping in different ways there. And then just the community in general doing their thing, and, putting it out there. And we're also holding, I don't want to forget to mention, our third, and I say annual Litecoin Summit. We couldn't do it the last 2 years because of the environment, but we will be holding it. We had 2 Litecoin Summits. They were awesome. We're holding the third one in October in Las Vegas. Litecoin.net is our website, our main website. And also there's a link right on the front page to the summit. But that's also an awesome place for the community to get together, learn, network. We've had incredible speakers there, from development to adoption to, the political climate to everything else. And it's also, it's just a great place. Also, people just wanting to get out, and there's something to be said for meeting in person, especially now. But the last summit, I know several people that actually have jobs now because of the summit. They came in, they met people, and so it's a great opportunity. We hope to see everybody there, and all the information is on our site at litecoin.net. So that'll be in Las Vegas on October 21st and October 22nd.
Awesome.
I love hearing people get jobs that show up to these things. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, it was great. They're still working, and they still have their jobs. So.
Nice.
And so people want to get involved, like Litecoin.net, like, if you're like, hey, I want to start participating, or like, I want to, like, what are some of the things that someone could look forward to doing if they want to get involved with the foundation?
Yeah, so there on our website, there's a volunteer form you could submit. I think there's a question about why you want to volunteer. Maybe we just ask that somebody put just some basic information in there. We could then reach out. We'll kind of take it from there. As far as what you can get involved in, that's the cool thing. When I initially started with the foundation, I've been in real estate for 25 years. I'm a licensed real estate broker, but I was just passionate about starting getting into crypto, mainly because I had worked with banks and in this environment that I saw and the way things were being done for so many years. So I realized that when I saw Bitcoin, how important better money was, and then I got involved in Litecoin. I just wanted to get involved in crypto, so I reached out just to volunteer some time, my spare time, not knowing what I was going to do. And then I was invited aboard. Still didn't have any idea what I was going to do. So I just started helping some people, active volunteers. And next thing you know, we're putting on a summit, got involved there, and then started doing more and more and more. And really pretty much stopped doing a lot of my real estate because I was so passionate about crypto and wanted to help there. And fortunately, I was able to do that. And I was in a place where it allowed me to do that. But so yeah, people, anything they feel they can offer, I'd say just go to the website, submit it, because we can always use help in any given, any way. We welcome that. So, and you can connect with other people that might be looking to do the same types of things as well. So we're happy to support, anybody that wants to do something, and reach out to us.
That's great. Whatever your talents are, lend a hand.
100%. And, it's also a great way to build experience, say for a resume or something. Somebody wants to just maybe getting involved, starting out in the crypto space and stuff. So.
Do you have any sort of internship program for younger folks?
We've actually talked about that. We should. We don't have any specific internship program right now. I know several people have been hired that were volunteers of the foundation, and I have no question that that added experience played a role. But that's definitely something we've been exploring as well. We do have like with the summit, for example, we'll have some of the volunteers, and they'll become a core summit team members to help on different areas of like sponsorships or speakers and stuff like that. And that's a really cool way to kind of for people to get involved more. But yeah, it's definitely worth something exploring. I think we are getting a lot of inquiries through the site already. I think we'd get even that much more if we had kind of an official, for lack of a better word, internship program.
Awesome.
Got some people for you.
Yeah, for sure. So we're coming up on an hour here, man. I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask, you've got MWEB, and I know you guys have been working on that, but what do you want to see in the future of Litecoin? Like, what would you like to see out of this whole thing and where crypto goes? And, what's your vision for the future here?
Yeah. So in the much longer term picture, I just would love to see the whole world using Litecoin and Bitcoin, not only as a payments, but as a store of value. I'd love to see any person you talk to know what Litecoin is when you bring up the name. I'd love for it to be as simple as possible. I do expect it will, like just payments to be as simple as possible for people, and allow basically, the beauty of Litecoin is that anybody can participate. So I'd love to see in a world where we don't have too much over regulated situations. People really have true control of their own money, can spend it as they wish, and without being subject to some of the things that we see today. I do think it's also exciting some of the things that could be built on top of the Litecoin blockchain, and I don't think we've even know what some of those things are yet. But the thing with what I always say is like I said with real estate, you could build a great house, but the most important thing, you need to build a foundation. Otherwise, it's stop right there. You're wasting your money. And I would hope that developers, when they're thinking about spending money, are going to consider what they're building on, because you could spend a lot of money, but if you're not building on something that's time tested and proven and reliable, it could all go to waste. So I do believe, as time goes on, and unfortunately, as we see more of these collapses and failures, people recognize the importance of something that's been time tested and proven and decentralized, and we'll get more and more development and explore new things. I think that I'll be really excited about when I know what they are, but I don't know what they are yet. So,
yeah. Awesome. Cool, man. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, Alan, from Litecoin Foundation. Thank you guys in the chat here for participating and being part of it. It's always great to see you, man, and cheering on the Litecoin Foundation and Litecoin in general in the community. You guys are always the best. So appreciate you coming on, and John, my man, as always, appreciate it. We'll chat with you backstage.